Let me start with something a lot of people feel, but don't really say out loud. Life today feels heavier. Not physically, mentally. You wake up, and before you even get out of bed, your brain is already running. Messages, notifications, things you forgot to do, things you should be doing, people doing better than you, news you didn't ask for. It's like your mind doesn't have an off switch anymore. And the weird part is, on paper, life is actually better than ever. You've got more convenience, more access, more information, more opportunities than any generation before you. You can order food in seconds, talk to anyone, anywhere, learn anything online, watch anything instantly. So why does it feel like people are more anxious, more stressed, more lost than ever? That's the question. And the easy answer, the one people love to throw around, is this. People today are just weaker. They can't handle pressure. They're too sensitive. Sounds neat, sounds simple, sounds wrong. Because if you actually look at what's happening, it doesn't make sense. Did millions of people all suddenly decide to become mentally fragile at the exact same time? No. That's not how humans work. When something changes on a massive scale like this, it's usually not because people got worse. It's because the environment changed. And not in a small way. In a massive, system-level way. Think about it like this. Imagine you take a fish out of clean water and drop it into polluted water. Then you watch it struggle. Do you say, wow, that fish is weak? Or do you say, something's wrong with the water? That's what's happening here. We're judging people without looking at the environment they're living in. Because here's the truth most people don't realize. Your mental state is not just about your personality. It's heavily shaped by what you're exposed to every single day. And right now, people are being exposed to something completely new, something no previous generation had to deal with growing up. We're talking about a world where your attention is constantly being pulled in 100 directions, a world where you're always connected but somehow feel more alone, a world where you're not just living your life, you're also watching everyone else's life at the same time. That didn't exist before. Not at this scale, not at this intensity. There used to be natural limits. You compared yourself to maybe your classmates, your coworkers, your neighbors, a small circle. Now, you're comparing yourself to thousands of people a day without even realizing it. People richer than you, better looking than you, more successful than you, more put together than you. And you're seeing the highlight reel, not the real life. That alone is enough to mess with your head. But it doesn't stop there. There's also the constant stimulation. Your brain never gets bored anymore. And that might sound like a good thing, but it's not. Because boredom used to serve a purpose. It forced you to think, to reflect, to process your emotions, to sit with yourself. Now, the moment you feel even a little bit uncomfortable, what do? You reach for your phone. Scroll, tap, swipe, distract. You don't process the feeling, you escape it. And when you keep doing that over and over again, something starts to build up underneath. Unprocessed thoughts, unresolved emotions, low-level anxiety that never really goes away. It just sits there, quietly, getting stronger. That's why a lot of people feel anxious for no reason. It's not for no reason, it's just not obvious. Now add one more layer to this. You're not just consuming content, you're being evaluated all the time. Likes, views, comments, reactions. Numbers attached to everything you say, everything you post, everything you share. And even if you tell yourself you don't care, part of your brain does, because humans are wired for social approval. We care about status. We care about how we're perceived. We care about where we stand. That used to happen in small groups. Now, it's happening in front of an invisible audience all the time. That changes how you think, how you act, how you see yourself. You start editing yourself, filtering yourself, second-guessing yourself. Not because you want to, but because the environment is pushing you to. So when people say, "Why is everyone so anxious now?" they're asking the wrong question. The better question is, what kind of environment are people living in today? Because if you really look at it, it's not neutral, it's not passive, it's actively shaping how people feel, how they think, and how they see themselves. And the biggest mistake people make is thinking they're immune to it. They think, yeah, that affects other people, not me. But if you're using the same apps, seeing the same content, living in the same system, you're in it too, whether you notice it or not. So, no, people didn't suddenly become weaker. They're reacting to a world that's fundamentally different from what humans evolved for. A world that moves faster, pushes harder, and never really lets you rest. And once you understand that, everything starts to make a lot more sense.
There wasn't a big announcement. No one stood up and said, "All right, from today on, childhood is going to change forever." It just happened. Slowly at first, then all at once. One year, kids were still knocking on each other's doors asking, "You want to come out?" A few years later, they were sitting in the same house messaging each other from different rooms. That shift right there is bigger than most people realize, because childhood isn't just a phase where you pass time. It's where your brain learns how the world works, how to deal with people, how to handle conflict, how to take risks, how to recover when things go wrong. And for thousands of years, that learning happened in the real world. Messy, unpredictable, sometimes uncomfortable, but real. You fell off your bike, you got back up. You said something awkward, people laughed, you learned. You argued with a friend, you figured out how to fix it, or you didn't, and that taught you something too. All of that built something important: emotional strength, social instincts, a sense of who you are without needing constant feedback. Now fast forward to what happened around the early 2010s. Smartphones became normal, not just for adults, for kids. And this is where things quietly flipped, because a smartphone isn't just a tool, it's a gateway. The moment a kid gets one, they're no longer just living in their physical environment. They're plugged into a digital world that never stops. A world that's faster, louder, and way more intense than anything in real life. And here's the key point. Kids didn't gradually adapt to this. They were dropped into it. Imagine learning how to swim by being thrown into the deep end of the ocean with waves, currents, and no one really explaining what's happening. That's what this was like. Now think about what replaces real-world experience. Instead of going outside and dealing with unpredictable situations, you're inside, interacting through a screen. Instead of reading facial expressions, tone, body language, you're reading text, emojis, delayed responses. Instead of resolving conflict face-to-face, you can ignore, block, ghost, or escalate instantly. That changes the learning process. In real life, feedback is slower and more nuanced. Online, feedback is instant and extreme. You post something, within seconds you know if it worked or not. That creates a different kind of pressure, because now it's not just about expressing yourself, it's about performing, even if you don't want to admit it.
You start thinking, is this good enough to post? Will people like this? Does this make me look stupid? That voice in your head, that didn't used to be there all the time. And when that starts early, when kids grow up with that voice, it shapes how they see themselves. They don't just live their life, they observe themselves living it. That's a huge difference. Now layer in another piece, time. Childhood used to have natural boundaries. You went to school, you came home, maybe you played outside, maybe you watched TV, but eventually it stopped. Now, there is no real off time. The social world follows you everywhere, into your bedroom, into your bed late at night. You're always reachable, always updated, always connected. And that might sound harmless, but it's not. Because your brain needs downtime, it needs silence, it needs space to process everything that happened during the day. Without that, things start to pile up. Stress doesn't get released, thoughts don't get sorted. You just carry everything forward into the next day, and the next, and the next. That's how low-level anxiety becomes constant background noise. You don't even notice it anymore. It just becomes your normal. Now here's something people don't talk about enough. When smartphones took over childhood, something else disappeared. Independent play, unstructured time, moments where kids had to figure things out on their own. Those moments are where confidence comes from. Not confidence from compliments, but confidence from experience. I handled that. I survived that. I can deal with things. If most of your time is spent in controlled, curated environments, apps, games, feeds, you don't get that same kind of feedback. You get stimulation, you get entertainment, but you don't get growth in the same way. And over time, that shows up. Not as something obvious, but as hesitation, as overthinking, as fear of doing things wrong. Because when you're used to environments where you can edit, delete, retry, real life feels riskier, more permanent, more uncomfortable. And people start avoiding it. Not because they're lazy, not because they're weak, but because they haven't had enough reps. That's the hidden cost of this shift. It didn't just change how kids spend their time, it changed how they build themselves. And once that foundation is different, everything that comes after, relationships, work, stress, identity, is affected. That's why this moment matters so much. It wasn't just about technology getting better. It was about childhood being redesigned without anyone really stopping to ask what the long-term effects would be.
Let's be real for a second. Most people think they're in control of their phone. You open an app because you decide to. You scroll because you feel like it. You stop when you're done. That's what it feels like. But if you're honest, how many times have you picked up your phone without even thinking? How many times did you open an app, close it, and then open it again like 5 minutes later? That's not random, that's design. And once you see how it works, you can't unsee it. Social media isn't just content sitting there waiting for you. It's a system built to keep you there, not for 10 minutes, for as long as possible. Because your attention is the product, and the longer you stay, the more valuable you are. So, the real question is, how do they keep you hooked? It comes down to one thing: your brain's reward system. There's a concept in psychology called dopamine. People throw that word around a lot, but here's the simple version. Dopamine isn't just about pleasure, it's about anticipation. It's the feeling of maybe something good is about to happen. And that maybe is the key, because your brain gets more hooked on unpredictable rewards than predictable ones.
Think about a slot machine. You don't win every time. You don't even win most of the time, but every now and then you do, and that's enough to keep you pulling the lever again and again. That system is called variable reward schedule. And guess what? Social media runs on the exact same logic. Every time you refresh your feed, you don't know what you're going to get. Maybe something funny, maybe something shocking, maybe a message, maybe a like, maybe nothing. That uncertainty is what keeps you scrolling, not because everything is amazing, but because something might be. And your brain keeps chasing that next hit. Now add another layer, social validation. Humans are wired to care about what other people think. That's not a flaw, that's survival. Back in the day, being accepted by your group mattered. It meant safety, cooperation, belonging. But now, that same instinct is being triggered by numbers, likes, comments, shares, views. Tiny signals that tell your brain you're approved, you matter, you're seen. And when those signals are inconsistent, that's when it gets addictive. Sometimes you post something and it does well. Sometimes it doesn't. So what do? You try again and again and again. Not always consciously, but the loop is there. Now here's where it gets deeper. It's not just about getting approval, it's about avoiding disapproval. Because the same system that gives you likes also opens the door to judgment, silence, negative comments, being ignored, and your brain reacts to that even more strongly. So now you're not just posting to express yourself, you're posting to manage how you're perceived. You start filtering, editing, holding back, second-guessing. Is this too much? Is this cringe? Will people misunderstand this? That constant self-monitoring, that drains mental energy, and it slowly disconnects you from who you actually are. Because instead of asking, what do I want to say, you start asking, what will work? Now combine all of this. Endless content, unpredictable rewards, constant evaluation, no real stopping point. You've got a system that's not just engaging, it's absorbing. Time disappears. You pick up your phone for a minute, suddenly it's been 45 minutes. And when you stop, you don't feel satisfied. You feel kind of empty, like you consumed a lot, but nothing really stuck. That's not an accident either, because most of the content is designed to be quick, emotional, and replaceable. It hits you, then it's gone. No depth, no resolution, just enough to keep you moving to the next thing. Over time, that does something subtle to your brain. Your attention span shortens, your tolerance for boredom drops, your ability to sit with one thing, one thought, one task starts to fade, and that spills into real life. Work feels harder, reading feels slower, conversations feel less engaging, not because those things got worse, but because your brain got used to a different speed, a different level of stimulation, so normal life starts to feel underwhelming. And when that happens, what do? You go back to your phone, not because it's better, but because it's easier, more immediate, more stimulating. And just like that, the loop continues. That's what people mean when they say social media hijacks your brain. It's not controlling you like a robot, it's just tapping into systems that already exist and turning the volume way up, way beyond what they were designed for. And once that becomes your daily environment, it doesn't just affect how you spend your time, it affects how you think, how you feel, and how you see yourself, whether you realize it or not. Let's talk about something most people don't even realize is happening to them, but it affects them every single day. Comparison. Not the obvious kind, not the "I wish I had his car" type of thing. I'm talking about the quiet, constant background comparison that never really stops, the kind you don't even notice anymore because it feels normal. But it's not. Here's the truth. Humans have always compared themselves to others. That's nothing new. You look at people around you to figure out where you stand. Am I doing okay? Am I behind? Am I respected? That used to happen in small circles. Your friends, your classmates, your coworkers, maybe a few dozen people. And even then, it could mess with your head sometimes. But now, that circle is gone. Now you're comparing yourself to hundreds, sometimes thousands of people a day. And here's the worst part. You're not comparing real lives. You're comparing your normal life to everyone else's highlight reel. Think about what you actually see when you scroll. You don't see the boring parts. You don't see the failures. You don't see the doubts, the stress, the bad days. You see the wins, the best angles, the edited moments, the carefully selected pieces of someone's life. Even people who are struggling present it in a way that still looks good, because everything is filtered through one question: how will this be received? So what you're looking at isn't reality, it's performance. Now imagine feeding your brain that all day. Of course it starts to shift how you see yourself, because your brain doesn't constantly remind you, hey, this is curated. It just takes in the information and reacts. And the reaction is usually something like, I'm not doing enough, I'm behind. Everyone else seems to have it figured out, even if that's not actually true. Now, here's where it gets more subtle. It's not just big, obvious things. It's not just money or success or looks. It's everything. How people dress, how they talk, where they go, what they eat, how productive they are, how happy they seem. You're constantly being shown better versions of every category of life, and your brain starts keeping score whether you want it to or not. That creates pressure. Not loud pressure, not the kind where someone is yelling at you. Quiet pressure, internal pressure, the kind that makes you feel like you should always be improving, optimizing, upgrading, even when nothing is actually wrong. That's why a lot of people feel restless, like they can't just sit still and be okay with where they are, because there's always something or someone reminding them that they could be doing more. Now add one more layer: speed. This comparison doesn't happen once a day. It happens dozens, sometimes hundreds of times. Every scroll is a new reference point, new person, new standard, new version of better. Your brain doesn't get time to reset. It just keeps adjusting the bar, higher, higher, higher. And eventually something strange happens. No matter what you achieve, it doesn't feel like enough, because the moment you reach one level, you've already seen 10 people at the next level. So satisfaction never really lands. You just move the goalpost again. That's the trap. Now, let's be honest about something else. A lot of this isn't even about logic. You might know that what you're seeing isn't real. You might know people are curating their lives. But that doesn't stop the feeling, because this isn't happening at the level of reasoning. It's happening at the level of instinct. Your brain reacts first, then you try to explain it after. So even if you tell yourself this is fake, part of you still feels like you're falling behind. And that feeling builds up over time. Not as one big hit, but as small, repeated signals, day after day, scroll after scroll, until it becomes your baseline, that low-level sense of, I'm not where I should be. Now, think about what that does to your mental state. You're not just dealing with your actual life, you're dealing with a distorted version of everyone else's life layered on top of it. That's exhausting because you're fighting a standard that isn't even real. And the worst part, there's no natural endpoint. There's always more content, more people, more comparisons. It never turns off unless you turn it off. And most people don't. They wake up and check. They go through the day and check. They go to bed and check. So their brain is constantly being reminded of where they stand, even when they don't need to be, even when it's doing more harm than good. So when people say, "Why do I feel like I'm not enough?" a lot of the time, it's not coming from their actual life. It's coming from this invisible system of comparison, running quietly in the background, all the time.
There's a weird contradiction in how people are growing up today. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. In the real world, everything got safer, more controlled, more supervised, more careful. But online, it's the exact opposite. No rules, no real boundaries, no gradual exposure. And that combination is a problem because it flips how humans are supposed to develop. Let's start with real life. Go back a couple decades. Kids had a lot more freedom. They walked to school alone, played outside for hours, got into arguments without adults stepping in immediately, took small risks, sometimes dumb ones, and dealt with the consequences. That wasn't perfect, but it trained something important: judgment, resilience, the ability to handle uncertainty. Now compare that to today. A lot of kids are constantly supervised. Parents are more cautious, schools are stricter, society is more risk-aware. Everything is about preventing things from going wrong. Don't climb that, you might fall. Don't go there, it's not safe. Don't do that, it could go badly. The intention is good, but the side effect? Less real-world experience, less trial and error, less exposure to manageable stress. And here's the thing. You don't build confidence by being protected from everything. You build it by handling things, even small things, especially small things, because those small moments stack up. I figured that out. I dealt with that. I survived that. That's where real self-trust comes from. Now, here's where it gets strange. At the exact same time real life got more controlled, the online world exploded. And online, there's almost no protection. No one is slowly introducing you to it. No one is saying, "Let's build this up step by step." You just open an app, and suddenly you're exposed to everyone's opinions, everyone's lifestyles, everyone's judgments, good and bad, all at once. There's no filter, no pacing, no training period. You go from a protected environment straight into a high-pressure social arena. That's a huge jump, and most people aren't ready for it because they haven't built the internal stability yet. So what happens? They react, they absorb, they internalize. Instead of filtering things, they take them personally. Instead of brushing things off, they overthink them because they haven't had enough real-world reps to build that mental buffer. Now think about feedback. In real life, feedback is usually limited. A few people, a specific moment, context you understand. Online, feedback is unlimited and often anonymous. You can post something and get responses from people who don't know you, don't care about you, and don't see you as a real person. That changes the tone completely. Because when there's no accountability, people say things they would never say face to face. And even if it's just a small percentage of people being negative, that's what your brain focuses on. Not the 10 positive comments, the one negative one, the one that hits. Now, combine that with the fact that you're still figuring out who you are. Your identity isn't fully formed yet. So when you get strong reactions, positive or negative, it affects you more. It starts shaping how you see yourself.
what you post, what you hide, what you avoid. You start building your identity based on feedback loops, not internal understanding, external reaction. That's unstable because it changes depending on the audience, and the audience is always changing. Now here's another layer. In real life, mistakes fade. You say something awkward, people forget. You mess up, it passes. Online, things stick. Screenshots, reposts, old posts resurfacing. So the cost of making a mistake feels higher, which leads to something else: fear. Fear of saying the wrong thing, fear of being misunderstood, fear of being judged. So people start playing it safe, not expressing themselves fully, not taking social risks. And that might protect them in the short term, but in the long term, it slows down growth. Because again, you don't build confidence by avoiding discomfort. You build it by going through it. Now look at the full picture. Real life, less risk, more protection, fewer chances to build resilience. Online, high exposure, constant evaluation, no safety net. That imbalance creates tension. You've got less real-world experience, but more psychological pressure than ever before, and your brain is trying to keep up. That's why people feel overwhelmed, not because they can't handle anything, but because the system they're in doesn't match how humans naturally develop. It's like training in a low-pressure environment, then suddenly being thrown into a high-stakes game. No transition, no build-up, just pressure. And people are expected to deal with it like it's normal, but it's not. And once you understand that, a lot of things start to click. Why people hesitate more, why they overthink simple interactions, why they feel exposed even when they're doing nothing wrong. It's not random, it's the result of being overprotected in one world and completely exposed in another.
So now you see the problem. It's not just you. It's the environment, the constant input, the comparison loop, the pressure, the noise. All of that shapes how you think, whether you notice it or not. But here's the part people usually get wrong. They think the solution is extreme. Delete everything, move off grid, quit your phone. That sounds good, but it's not realistic for most people. You don't need to escape the world. You just need to stop letting it run your mind. And that starts with something simple. Awareness is not enough. Just knowing this stuff doesn't change anything. You can understand the system perfectly and still fall into it every day. So what actually works? You change how you interact with it, not all at once, but in small, deliberate ways. Let's break it down. First, create friction. Right now, everything is designed to be effortless. You tap and you're in. No resistance, no pause, no decision. That's the problem. So you add a little bit of resistance back. Move your most addictive apps off your home screen. Log out after using them. Turn off non-essential notifications. Now, when you reach for your phone, there's a split second where you have to decide, do I actually want to open this? That tiny pause matters because it interrupts the automatic behavior. You're no longer just reacting, you're choosing. Second, stop starting your day with other people's lives. This one is huge. If the first thing you do in the morning is check your phone, you're immediately stepping into comparison mode before your own day even begins. You haven't had a single original thought yet, and you're already consuming other people's highlights, opinions, updates. That sets the tone. Instead, give yourself a buffer, even just 20 or 30 minutes. Wake up, sit with your own thoughts, plan your day,
Move your body. Do something that belongs to you. Because once your mind is stable, everything else hits differently. Third, reintroduce boredom. This sounds weird, but it's one of the most important things. Your brain needs empty space, not constant stimulation, because that's where processing happens. That's where ideas form. That's where emotions settle. That's where you actually think. Right now, most people don't let that happen. The moment there's silence, they fill it. Waiting in line? Phone. On the bus? Phone. Nothing to do? Phone. So your brain never resets. Try this instead. Pick small moments where you do nothing. No music, no scrolling, no distraction. Just sit. At first, it'll feel uncomfortable, restless, boring. That's the point. That's your brain recalibrating. Fourth, reduce the comparison input. You don't need to see everything, and you definitely don't need to see everyone. If certain accounts consistently make you feel worse, unfollow them, not because they're bad people, but because your brain doesn't need that input every day. Curate your environment, because whether you like it or not, what you see repeatedly shapes how you feel. This isn't about being sensitive, it's about being intentional. Fifth, build something in the real world. This is the most important one. You need experiences that aren't filtered through a screen, things that are messy, slow, imperfect. Go to the gym, learn a skill, have conversations face to face. Do something where progress is real, not measured in likes, because real-world feedback hits differently. It's grounded, it's earned, and it builds a kind of confidence that no amount of online validation can replace. I did that. I got better at that. I can handle this. That feeling is solid. It doesn't disappear when you close an app. Last thing, accept that you won't do this perfectly. You're still going to scroll. You're still going to get pulled in sometimes. That's normal. The goal isn't to eliminate it completely. The goal is to stop being unconsciously controlled by it. To go from, "Why am I doing this again?" to, "I know exactly what I'm doing right now." That shift alone changes everything. At the end of the day, this isn't really about phones, it's about control. Who decides what you think about? Who decides how you feel? Who decides what matters? If you don't take that back, something else will take it for you, and it won't ask. So no, you don't need to disappear from the world. You just need to stop letting the world live in your head rent-free. And once you start doing that, you don't just feel less anxious, you feel clearer, more grounded, more like yourself again.